Despite their intentions of ending the franchise with the trilogy, the financial success of Friday the 13th Part 3 gave Paramount no choice but to support a sequel. Making almost $37 million at the box office during its theatrical run, Part 3 was the movie that ended E.T.'s streak of being number one at the box office. It also was in the top 25 highest-grossing films for the year 1982. However, this time they made the decision to put it right in the title. Part 4 would be the final chapter in the Friday the 13th franchise. Now, you might be wondering, why was Paramount so quick in their desire to end a franchise that was a consistent financial behemoth for them? Well, the uncomfortable truth is that while Paramount was more than okay to rake in the cash from Friday the 13th, there was a sense of deep embarrassment in regard to the franchise. Executives within the Paramount company viewed Friday the 13th as a B-movie lowbrow franchise that was below the reputation of the company. This included Frank Mancuso Jr., who is the son of former Paramount president Frank Mancuso Sr., and he produced Part 2 and Part 3. While Friday the 13th was his first big break in Hollywood, he had become bitter and resentful towards the franchise. Mancuso felt that despite the massive financial success of the films he produced, he wasn't getting the respect that came with that success within the industry. In fact, he felt that his attachment to the franchise was hurting his reputation. With that, Mancuso and others were ready to pull the plug on Friday the 13th. This time, a new director needed to be brought in. Steve Miner was offered the job once again, but this time he was completely out. Remember, he only directed Part 3 reluctantly, and after the difficulty of shooting a 3D film, he had absolutely no interest in continuing on with the franchise. To replace him, Joseph Zito, director of The Prowler, was brought in. However, from the beginning, there was a tense relationship between Zito and the studio. The reason was the studio hired Zito to direct and write the film. Zito did not have any experience as a writer and did not have any real interest in writing the final chapter. After repeatedly asking the studio to hire someone else to write the script for the film, a request that was refused, he finally agreed to write it, only to turn around and hire his friend Barney Cohen to write it. This was an under-the-table deal, with Zito giving Cohen some of his salary for writing it. Eventually, this deal was outed. Cohen was given credit, but was punished by the union. No matter what the setup was, Zito and Cohen decided on a new approach for this entry, a film that is more character-driven with a darker, grittier, and more serious tone. While Part 4 does have a likable group of partying teenagers, Zito and Cohen added the Jarvis family in an effort to raise the stakes. This would be the introduction of one of the most important characters in the franchise, with Tommy Jarvis, played in Part 4 by Corey Feldman. The gamble by the filmmakers paid off. While still having all the ingredients that fans look for in a Friday the 13th film, Part 4 stands above the rest for many because these are some of the best characters in the entire franchise. While I didn't share the love for Part 4 the first few times I saw it, I now consider it to be one of the best entries in the franchise. Allow me to explain why. To start, one thing I've always loved about this movie is just the entire opening of the film. The montage of events from each of the first three films, highlighted by Paul's great speech by the campfire in Part 2, gives it at least some feeling of finality.
If you listen to the old-timers in town, they'll tell you he's still out there.
Camp Crystal Lake is jinxed.
It's got a death curse.
Some folks claim they've even seen him. Right in this area.
Who's that? Oh, hi. What are you doing out in this mess?
The girl who survived that night at Camp Blood, that Friday the 13th, she claims she saw him. Jason's out there.
Going from that, the movie picks up right after the events of Part 3, as we see paramedics and law enforcement on the scene at Higgins Haven. One moment I love about this is when after the last of the ambulances leave, and we as the audience sit at Higgins in silence for a few moments, soaking in the quiet dread and devastation of what was supposed to be a fun weekend for Chris Higgins and her friends that went horribly wrong. Then we go to the hospital where we mainly meet two characters in Axel, the coroner, and Robbie, the nurse. This seems very much like a I can fix him type of toxic relationship between these two, but these two characters are pretty entertaining for the brief spotlight they are given. Overall, I think the hospital setting is a refreshing change of scenery from the traditional camp wood setting that we had almost entirely gotten out of the franchise so far. I think it's used a perfect amount as well, as having a whole movie take place at the hospital would have made it seem a bit too much like Halloween 2. Having it just be the opening allows for just enough of a refreshing change of scenery before we get back to the familiar wood setting. This can be viewed as not only a nod to Halloween 2, but to the original concept for Friday the 13th Part 3. It certainly also helps that the Axel kill with the hacksaw sets the tone for a darker, meaner Friday the 13th movie. Overall, the opening of this film is pretty much perfect. Going off of that, when talking about Part 3, I described it as the Friday the 13th formula in its most basic, bare-bones form. Well, the final chapter is the exact opposite, as this is the first movie in the franchise to be something more than essentially just counselors or college kids go to Crystal Lake and somebody kills them. Sure, if that is all you want of the movie, you get that with another group of partying young adults coming to Crystal Lake for a fun weekend. However, this film is relatively ambitious for a Friday the 13th movie by balancing three stories. First, we have the group that I just mentioned, then we have the Jarvis family, and then we have Rob, who at first we think is just up in the woods hunting for bear.
You can't be hunting for bear.
Only to find out that he's on a quest for revenge against Jason, as he's the brother of Sandra from Part 2. On its own, I appreciate the movie trying to do more than just the standard Friday the 13th formula, and for the most part, it's executed very well. Starting with the group of kids, this right here is some of the funnest and most likable group of Crystal Lake partygoers in the franchise, right up there with Part 2. Everyone remembers Crispin Glover and his dance moves. But the whole dynamic between him and Teddy with the dead fuck gag is both hilarious and memorable.
Let me put it in the old computer. No, I'm serious about this. The computer don't lie. Now, let's see. What? It says you're a dead fuck. What? A dead fuck?
Even if some of these characters fit the definition of slasher tropes, the movie allows us to spend more time with these characters, fleshing them out a bit more and revealing in places that these aren't just the tropey characters we think they are. A good example of this is Sam, who is presented to us as the girl with a reputation of being easy, only to reveal that she's more loyal to her boyfriend than initially thought. We also spend more time with her best friend Sarah, the shy, nice girl of the group. Her character arc is both interesting to see and kind of hilarious in how it ends. Going past the partygoers, though, we get the Jarvis family and the introduction of the Tommy Jarvis character. As stated in the opening of the video, Zito and Cohen felt that making an actual child one of the survivors of a slasher movie wasn't something that had been done within the genre before, and would add to the stakes of the film. In my opinion, they were correct. The small family of Tommy, his sister Trish, and their mother is wholesome, and gives the movie a similar warmth and coziness that I praise the original for having.
You're not in the mood for making a salad? Well, I'm not either. I'm in the mood for... No!
Portrayed by Corey Feldman, it's easy to see why this is the favored version of the Tommy Jarvis character for many. Corey does a great job in the role, especially for a child, and the character himself is smart, resourceful, entertaining, and relatable. As has been well documented at this point, the aspect of the character making masks and being obsessed with special effects is a nod to Tom Savini.
Come here, I want to show you something.
I also love his relationship with Trish, who while trying to be a normal teenager is very protective of her younger brother. In many ways, the Trish-Tommy relationship reminds me of the Rachel-Jamie sibling relationship in Halloween 4. In this case, Friday the 13th beat Halloween to the punch. Where it felt like Part 3 was embracing the cheesier, less serious side of the franchise for the first time, the final chapter once again does the opposite. While some cheesiness is still present here, it feels like this movie is going for a darker, meaner, and more brutal tone. The movie looks great, and despite being filmed in California again instead of the Northeast, does a much better job capturing the atmosphere and feel of the first two films. To go off of that, Ted White does an incredible job as Jason in the film. He really captures everything the Brooker Jason brought with the intimidation, size, and quickness, but the Ted White Jason feels meaner and angrier. Maybe Ted really was angry because he did not have a good experience working on the film, largely due to his very tense relationship with director Joseph Zito. This was because of the way Zito treated other cast and crew members on set, as Ted described him as a bully. By the end, his experience was so bad that White requested his name be taken off the movie. Overall, though, the meaner energy extends to the kills in this movie. Tom Savini returned to do the effects. The chance to kill Jason appealed to him, and it shows. Whether it was the hacksaw kill of Axel, the spear gun kill of Paul, the shower kill of Doug, or the axe kill of Sam, these are some of the most brutal and graphic kills of the franchise up to this point. Even though the film was cut a lot by the MPAA once again, they still hold up. Harry Manfredini's score is once again excellent. Much like the movie itself, this feels like the most ambitious score to date out of Friday the 13th. One of the very minor issues I have with the film is with the character of Rob. While I think the idea of the character, someone related to a past familiar victim of Jason showing up and wanting revenge, I think this is an area where the movie is a bit overly ambitious as far as the story goes. First of all, it's important to remember that parts 2 through 4 take place all over one weekend. I just don't find it realistic that in the span of 24 to 48 hours, Rob would be able to process his sister's death, discover and learn all about the history of Jason Voorhees and Crystal Lake, and go there in a quest for revenge. In the pre-internet days, it really does stretch believability. On top of that, the whole encounter this movie is building up to turns out to be a dud. Rob gets killed immediately upon facing Jason. It would have been nice to see him put up a little bit of a fight. This isn't something that hurts the movie significantly, though. This aspect of the film is just something I have mixed feelings about overall. Another thing I have mixed feelings about is the ending or defeat of Jason itself. I can understand what the filmmakers were going for, with Tommy reminding Jason of his lost innocence, while at the same time Tommy has officially lost his childhood innocence because of Jason.
Jason! Jason! Remember me, Jason? Jason, don't you remember? Remember, Jason. Jason, remember.
But once again, I don't buy that Jason would be so easily hypnotized by seeing a younger version of himself in the same way he did when Ginny was pretending to be his mother. Still, at the very least, they ditched the jump scare ending, so I'm happy about that. Also, Jason's head sliding down the machete is very cool. Overall, though, despite some things I have mixed feelings about, it's easy to see why the final chapter is one of the most celebrated entries in the franchise. With a more ambitious approach to the Friday the 13th formula, great characters, a darker, meaner tone and atmosphere, and brutal kills, This movie gets the Tommy Jarvis era kicked off on a very strong note and is a great way to celebrate this Friday the 13th. I'm going to give Friday the 13th, the final chapter, a 9 out of 10. But that's going to do it for me in this video today, folks. Comment below and let me know your thoughts on the final chapter. Is this your favorite in the franchise, or do you think maybe this is a bit overrated? Let me know your thoughts below and I'll see you guys later. Okay, take care.